All right, so we're going to be talking about sensors and more specifically optical sensors. There's a lot of misinformation out there, I think. All of these that I'm about to talk about are pretty good. I'm just going to go maybe a little bit more in depth than some other people tend to make videos on. But again, these are all generally going to be pretty good. Uh, so we're going to start off with the pretty popular one from last gen. A lot of people know it. It was in Zowie stuff. I think it's still used in some Zowie stuff. The 3310. It has variable frame rate, that whole thing. It has same smoothing every step. It's about 4 milliseconds. People have talked about uh, native steps for DPI of 50, and the max control speed is like 7 meters a second. Depends on the pad, depends on the mouse. There are a couple of different SROMs that you can get for this, and I'm not sure if the actual delay is the same across all the 3310s, but some have an XY axis difference. So on the Zowie stuff that uses 3310, that's why some people think the vertical movement has a delay. I'm pretty sure it's just because it actually measures in at a lower DPI. There's the 3988. It has a variable frame rate, same thing, 3,000, 7,000, about 12,500-ish, and it has variable smoothing depending on DPI setting. So at 1,600 and above, I think this is the same actually for the 3310. Both go up to 1,550 steps of 50 DPI for both, and 1,550 is about as high as I'll say you should probably go with either of these. At 1,600 and above, it kind of kicks up the delay a little bit, and it doesn't really matter too much at 1,550 and below. So the old Death Adder Chroma has the 3989. It's the same thing. It's just Razer firmware stuff. This actually has a weird issue. If you don't use it at 1,800 specifically, it gets weird scaling. So it's going to have a lower max track speed. It's going to be it's scaled improperly. It's not right. So if you're going to use the Death Adder Chroma, you should really only be using it at 1,800. And the max control speed is a little higher than the 3310 at about 8 meters a second. We're going to move on to the 3360 now, and it has a few different, or it has 4 different frame rate modes rather than 3 at about 4,100, 4,900, 5,900, 12,000. Native steps are 50 for the 3366, 100 for the 3360. The max control speed is ridiculously high. You'll never run into it ever. I am referencing this old overclock post for QSXCV. The 3310 and 3988 should be at about 0.2 meters a second and 0.6 meters a second for their frame rate transitions, and the 3366 is 0.4, 0.8, and 1.1. And this doesn't really mean too much again, but what can end up happening is if there are some firmware issues across any of these, usually not the 3366, it hasn't happened in any of those, but if the smoothing that's kicked up is too early, if it starts below or before the time that it moves up to the next frame rate, you get weird stuttering effects, and it's jumpy. So you move your mouse, faster than you normally would for slow movements, and it kind of jumps a little bit. And you can see this in some mouse tester plots. And generally, you are going to see these in any sensor, just in the plots, but it doesn't really have any meaning for performance unless it starts a little earlier than it should. One notable example of this is the 3988 in the Torque X5 optical, but this has supposedly been fixed since the time that I tried it. There are some other good sensors out there. The 3330 is a good one. The 3325, the 3327, I would actually argue that the 4000 SROM of the 3090 is probably pretty usable if you have a full black pad. The speed-related accuracy variance stuff for all these sensors is generally pretty good, but if you're using a thicker pad that you can kind of press down into, if you don't have feet near the sensor, you can throw it off. So if your mouse that you're using for any of these sensors doesn't have feet near or around the sensor, try to stay away from super thick, squishy pads. There are some differences in firmware across all of these. So you might get a 3310 that has no horizontal and vertical difference, or no big difference in DPI there, but it might have a little bit more of a delay. Uh, Not a meaningful delay, I think. If you're missing your target by 4 milliseconds and you feel like the 3310 is sluggish, to put it bluntly, it's probably your fault, not the sensors. The 3360 has an integrated LED, so it should be more consistent feeling across 3360s versus 3310, 3988 stuff, and it's more up to the manufacturer to align everything for the lighting. Higher frame rate does not necessarily mean better tracking. This is why there are frame rate steps. It's not just for power efficiency. Uh, the higher the frame rate, the faster the algorithms have to be. So generally, they're more simplified. Some people talk about the MLT04. Please stop talking about the MLT04. It malfunctions at really low speeds. Please stop. It's not that good. Stop it. Cut it out. Some more malfunctions across all of these. If any of you watch Rocket Jump Ninja, you might know it as the tilt slam test. This is actually wrong. You don't need to tilt it or slam it. And the 3366 mice that I've tried, all of them across multiple units of G303s, etc., G Pro wired, they all have it still. The new Hero stuff from Logitech has a higher frame rate supposedly, and it's dynamic steps, so it caps out at 17,000. There isn't a whole lot of information on this, but I I would guess that it shouldn't really matter because honestly, you could play well with the 3310 still. Let's move on to lenses now. I don't think the actual terminology that's used here is right, but Logitech started using it this way, so this is what we've got. There are specular and non-specular lenses. Now, specular lenses mean that the sensor doesn't point straight down at the surface. You get a light that points down and kind of meets it in the middle. And what this can do is make the sensor position feel a little bit farther back, first of all. And second of all, when you lift your mouse up and put it back down, your cursor will move a little bit and then move back to the initial location for all the sensors that I've listed here. Non-specular lenses can have a higher liftoff distance, so when you pick your mouse up and put it back down, your cursor might actually move even more than the ones that do have the Z-axis bug, just because your hand might be shaky or something while you're not on the pad. Sensors that have specular lenses include the 3310, 3988, 3360, 3330, 3366. Mice that have non-specular lenses would include the 3090, the 3320, the AMO10, the 3325, the 3327, and the Hero. Some Logitech sensors, people have talked about the Mercury sensors having some minor angle snapping for small movements. I'm not sure if this is true. I can't confirm this as I don't own one, but it shouldn't really affect your aim too much, especially if you're using a low sensitivity. All of the modern sensors, including the 3090, actually bundle packages of information in 1-0 or 0-1 blocks. The MLT04 has a dead zone and can also bundle information in more diagonal movement, which is why some people say it feels more natural. But the malfunction speed, it's not worth using and shouldn't change performance for low sensitivity anyway. The highest DPI value that you should use in general, if you can accept it, should be about 800, 850-ish for all of these. The higher you go, the more jitter you'll get. Supposedly jitter shouldn't really be happening on 3366 stuff until above 3200, above 3300, somewhere around there. I've encountered it if you get just a little bit of dust on the lens from just long periods of extended use, year plus. Uh, and even with cleaning the lens, it won't be perfect. I've encountered jitter at 1800, 1850. So really try to stay as low as you can, as long as you don't get weird issues with your in-game sensitivity that causes you to skip around the targets. The AMO10, the 3325, and the 3327 all have native steps of 83.333. You might end up getting 250 DPI for AMO10. I think same goes for the 3090, so you might get steps like 500, 750. Some mice just outright lie to you about what DPI they're set to. I have a 3325, and when it's set to 800 DPI, it actually measures in at around 830, 835-ish, which lines up perfectly with the 83.33 native steps. So if you ever want to be safe about what your write sensitivity is, you have to measure every mouse that you use individually on whatever specific mouse pad you use. Not all DPI settings are the same across all mice, and the percentage difference isn't the same even on the same sensor in the same mouse. There are actually a couple of different SROMs for the 3360 and the 3366 and the 3389, which actually has the same performance as the 3360. Some actually have about 7,500 frames per second versus the 12,000 that's actually advertised. It's not really a huge deal. It's not going to have a massive effect on performance in game anyway, but there's no real way to tell without measuring it. PictureArt sensors actually have a weird quirk to them where the frame rates are different based on the clock speed, so different units of the same sensor in the same batch of mice even will have different results, so you can't get perfect consistency. I don't know how much the newer Logitech stuff differs from this. I wouldn't expect it to. There's never going to be some sort of super consistent product out there, especially for this type of electronic. I wouldn't worry about it too much.